All right, I've started the recording and welcome. This is November the 11th, 2020. And this is the webinar for Remember Who You Are. And I welcome everyone who's here. And if you will, if you haven't already muted yourself, please do that just so that we don't have background noise coming through because with multiple people on the call. So I'd like for you, if you would, in the chat, go to the chat box and enter your name will show up on there, but you can enter where you're coming from, where you are in the world today. If you would like to do that, I would love to see where people are. I know some of you, and I know quite a few of you, and I know some of you are local, and I know some are in Canada and in various places. So if you'll put that in the chat, and anytime through the talk today, if you have a question or a comment, feel free to post that in the chat. I may not get to them quickly, especially when I have the slideshow up. It's very hard for me to go from the slideshow to the chat section, but I will get back to those, and then we should have some time at the end for us to open the mics and have any questions and discussion that you might like to have. So what I'm going to do today is give you an introduction to the class that I'm starting next Wednesday. The class is called Remember Who You Are. And this webinar will stand on its own. I mean, it's not, incomplete, but it is the introduction to the class. And if you're interested, let me put my website. You probably are on here just because you are on my mailing list. So you probably already have this, but I'll put the website on there anyway. And welcome everybody. Yes, I'm seeing several from Canada and several local folks here. Yeah, Maryland. Thank you everybody for coming. This is wonderful, just wonderful. So as I go through the information today, this webinar, as well as the class, have several foundations of what we're talking about today. One will be the elements, the fire, earth, air, and water. And the fifth element, some people talk about 6 or 7 or 8 different portions to when you call the directions. For me, it's 5, and the fifth element is spirit, sometimes called ether, sometimes called love or divine love. So we'll talk about the elements. I'll talk about guidance and teachings from the divine feminine through some specific Egyptian goddesses and Celtic deities and guidance from the divine oneness. We'll do a couple of just really short meditations, and in the class I will do meditations from Universal Life Energy as well as some group timeline healing meditations and some other shamanistic like journeys that we'll do along the way. So and welcome to the folks who are coming in right now. So what I want to do is start with calling the directions. And if you know which direction the north, south, east, and west directions are in your home, feel free to turn to those. You can stay in your chair or you can stand if you'd like, either way. I'm going to stay in my chair, but I am going to turn toward the directions. So I start in the center and I end in the center as I call the directions. And so starting with the center, I say thank you to the divine light, the divine love that flows through all of us, coming into the center, coming in with us and opening this talk today with the divine oneness as the center of what we are doing. And I say thank you. And I turn to the east. The east is the direction of illumination, where the sun rises in the morning. And the Egyptian goddess Nut gives birth to the sun each and every day as her mother Tefnut watches the rising sun coming in. And the Egyptian Ra and the Celtic Lu and Anu teaching us gratitude, teaching us to be aware of sharing our energies with other people, awareness of hospitality, all of that Celtic line of opening. And so we say thank you for those teachings from that direction. And we say thank you to the air, the element of the East. The air blows through us, taking away, loosening those things that we need to let go, that we're still holding just a little too tight. So the air comes to blow through and begin to loosen those parts of us that need to go for our own spiritual growth. And I say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I turn to the south, the direction of joy and laughter, excuse me, the direction of music, of creativity. And I say thank you to the Egyptian goddess Bastet and Hathor, goddesses of love and pleasure and dance. And thank you to Bridget of the Celtic line, the goddess of creativity, the goddess who guides us to use that creativity within us for writing, for crafting, for poetry, for stories. And to the Orden Moore, who brought creation into manifestation through sound, the harmony, the sound of Orden Moore. And I say thank you, thank you, thank you. And for the element of fire from the south, the fire burns, not to harm us, but to help us let go, taking those things from the east that were loosened by the wind, by the air, and turning them into the fire so that we may let go and burn away all that needs to be released from us so that we may rise up as the phoenix, starting anew. And to the west, in the west, the direction of water flows toward us to wash away the ashes, to wash the ashes from the burning of those things that we need to release. And the water is there to refresh us, to lift us up, to help us see a new day, a new way, to reach toward our spiritual growth and development. And as we turn to the west, the black bear greets us and takes us into her cave, because the west is the direction of introspection. And we sit with the black bear in her cave as she fills us with knowledge. She fills our longing to know who we are, to know our connection to the oneness. And at the door of the cave, the mouth of the cave, stands the Egyptian Sekhmet and the Celtic Morrigan, who are our protectors, so that we may sit and go into the meditation to gain the knowledge and sit with the waters as we wash clear. And we say, thank you, thank you. And I turn to the north, taking the knowledge from the west to turn it into wisdom consciousness of the north. Ma'at, the Egyptian goddess, stands with her scales, stands for truth and justice, for harmony and balance, so that we may look at ourselves and remember where we need to step in our spiritual path. And Danu of the Celtic line is there to guide us to help us as we go through, because the north is the direction of challenges, the direction of earth, and the Mother Earth asks us to stand up as warriors of the heart, to risk that step, to risk opening and letting go. The air blows through us. The fire burns what we need to release. The west comes to cleanse us. And the north asks us to stand up and be who we truly are. And we come back to the center. The center is the area of sovereignty. And the goddess Maeve of the Celtic line is the goddess of sovereignty, who's there to help us remember who we are, to help us embrace the divine beings that we truly are within our souls. And she's there to guide us through this process. And the Cailleach of the Celtic, the original Earth Mother herself, wraps her arms around us, and Isis stands with her to hold us, to lift us, to remind us to step up, to step forth, to be all that we came here to be. And so we say thank you to all the divine beings who've come to be our guides today. And thank you to all of the elements. And I say Aho, Amen, Ashe, Hamdulillah, blessed be, and so it is. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here today. So I gave you a brief rundown on the things that that I'm covering in the talk today. I want to tell you in just a few minutes, I'll start a slideshow, and I will talk about a little more detail about the spirit wheel and the elements and how we relate to those. But I also want to talk about cycles, cycles of the sun, and cycles of the moon, cycles of nature, the seasons, and the planetary movements and the zodiac cycles, and how we weave that into our lives, and how we can become conscious of the cycles and use the cycles as guides or choose not to use those cycles, and how that impacts our life and our weaving of our stories. When we can use those cycles consciously, we begin to awaken to our true selves, and we begin to remember our soul's purpose. And so that's what we're here today to start that remembering, to open that doorway so that we can step into the reason that we came, and remember our connection to the divine, remember who we are and where we came from. So I'm so happy that you're here today, and very pleased, very pleased. So let me share my screen. Let me see, let me go back to this for just a minute and get it set up the slideshow from the beginning. And now let me share my screen. There we go. Okay, I hope that you can kind of give me a thumbs up if you're seeing the shared screen. Okay, good, good. I'm seeing some folks. So this is the beginning of the slideshow, and today's webinar as well as the class are called Remember Who You Are, remembering that connection to the oneness, to the divine. So we're going to look at the spirit wheel and the cardinal directions and elements, and a little bit about the guidance coming from some of our ancestors. Look at the cycles and the weaving and awakening to our soul's purpose. So as we respect the earth and honor the spirits, we look at the elements. the fire, earth, air, and water. And they're not just out there, they're not just words, they are actually a part of our bodies, our physical bodies, and our soul. We as people are made of fire. That's the heat within us. We're not, there are cold-blooded animals and warm-blooded. We are of the warm-blooded variety. That's the fire within us. We breathe the air to continue living. The water flows through our very veins, and our body is more water than any other element. And the earth, the elements of the earth are all a part of us. And our ancestors guide us from the east, the south, the west, and the north, and that spiritual center of love. Everything is a stream of consciousness. Everything. So the spirit wheel, and for me, I use the Egyptian and Celtic guides as I go through my spiritual growth and development. So let me talk just a little bit about the spirit wheel. In the east, which is the element of air, Ra, the Egyptian sun god, Tefnut and Nut are the Egyptian goddesses with the guidance, and then there's Lu and Anu of the Celtic line. So the East is about illumination and gratitude, and that gratitude helping us remember that we are in a relationship with other people, with the land, and with our ancestors. And so we are asked to hold the hearth. That means to hold the energy of ourselves, our vibration, our bodies, so that we share that hospitality, so that we take the gratitude and turn it into a place that is helpful and useful for each of us and good for the people around us. And from the south, Bastet and Hathor are my guides, and Bridget and the Oran Moor of the Celtic line. So the south is the element of fire, and in the south, it's the energy of music and rhythm and dance and song and joy. And it's the direction of creativity with crafts and art and writing and poetry. And it's the direction of harmony and love. It's the place where we're given the opportunity to fall in love with the rhythm of life. And Bastet, sometimes she's called Bast, and Hathor are there to teach us about pleasure and dance and joy. And the Oran Moor is the origin of the vibration of music. And Bridget teaches us the poetry and the healing and the crafts. And in the west, with the water, is Sekhmet and the Morrigan, and the black bear, because she takes us into her cave. In the west, the water greets us as we step into that direction of introspection, and we sit in that black bear's cave to receive the knowledge, to receive the intuition, so that we may open ourselves to see the vision, to remember the story, and be connected to our heart. It's where we get that longing for the union with the divine, with the sacred. Sekhmet and Morrigan are protector goddesses. They are fierce, fierce goddesses. The Morrigan is often called the goddess of war, but she is the protector of women and children. She's a sorceress, a prophet. So there are so many overlaying layers of who these guides are, because there are many layers of who we are as well. And in the West, Nut sits. She's the guide of the East, but in the West, as the sun sets, Nut, is there to receive the sun coming into her body. And she holds that in her body and gives birth to the sun every morning. And in the north, the element of the earth, where Ma'at and Tot and Danu greet us and guide us. The north is the direction of earth, the direction of the warrior, but not the warrior of fighting in the way that we think of the warrior today, but the warrior of the heart, the warrior of wisdom, the warrior that challenges us to stand up, to be who we truly are, to let go of our fears and face the shadows and find our power, our true divine power, and hold that strength within us. And in the center is that center of divine love, the center of the oneness. It's the center of sovereignty. And in that center, Isis, the divine feminine, and Osiris, the divine masculine, are there to guide us. And the Kaliak, the original Earth Mother, and Maeve, the goddess of sovereignty, comes to help us. The center is where the goddess stands as the living hub of that energy that connects us to all of the other directions, to all of the other elements, to hold us there and help us find our connection with the divine in that center space. It's the place where nature calls, the land itself calls to us to communicate, to be one, to remember that we are all one with everything that exists. The center brings us to life. It helps us deepen our connection with the divine. It helps us find our true selves and attune ourselves through meditation, through dreams, through crystals, through understanding the animals that come into our lives, to understanding the people that come into and through our lives. This is the center because it's the connection with the oneness, with the divine. So as we keep in mind the cycles of going around the spirit wheel, sometimes called the medicine wheel, we look at that as a cycle, and we look at how we weave our lives in these cycles. We have cycles of the sun, day and night. We have cycles of the moon. We have the seasons of nature. We have planetary movement and astrology. And we have the larger zodiac cycles, which is actually a cycle of about 25,000, 26,000 years. And that's broken down into the smaller cycles that we know of, like our birth cycles, Libra and Scorpio and Aquarius. Well, the larger cycles are more like a 2,000-year cycle. So we'll talk about those cycles and how they impact us. Aaron Morgenstern, who is the writer of The Starless Sea and several other books, said, I have said many times that we're made of stardust. And in her book, she says, we're made of stardust and stories. And I love that. I love that. We all tell our stories. We all have our stories. We have our childhood stories. We have our young adult stories. We have all kinds of stories throughout our lives. And so we are stardust and we are stories. So I'd like you to look at this picture for just a minute and think about the stardust and think about your relationship with the stars. And so take a breath in and breathe in that air that contains stardust. As you breathe in the air, that our very ancestors breathed. And then touch your hands together or touch your face and look at those hands. Your hands, your body, your physical body is made of the atoms and molecules that make up the earth and the sun and the stars. We are part of the very earth itself. And our body goes from this physical moving flesh and blood, water flowing through the blood in our veins, back to the dust when our soul leaves the body. So as you touch your hands together, remember that what you're touching are the elements of your ancestors, of those who've lived before us. And hold that within your heart. Emily Dickinson wrote, "This quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies, was lads and girls, was laughter and ability and sighing and frocks and curls. We are stardust. We are the earth. We are the elements of the earth." And as elements on this earth, connected to all that is, we go through a variety of cycles. So the sun cycle is the cycle of rebirth. And I talked about Newt just a few minutes ago. This is a drawing. This is not one that's on the temples, but an artist's drawing of Newt. She's a goddess who's in the West, receives the sun into her body and folds her body over the earth. These are the stars of her folding over the earth, holding the sun in gestation throughout the night. And when the morning comes, her mother, Tefnut, sits at the mountain, making sure that she gives birth to the sun and the sun rises once again. And it's our cycle of death, birth, death, and rebirth over and over and over, our daily cycle of rebirth. And the seasons occur because our planet circles the sun. So it's another cycle. And then there are moon cycles. The moon has a serious impact on us, on humanity. Women go through the 28-day cycle with the sun and have our own moon cycles. And even the waters of the oceans are affected by the moon cycles. The tides that come in and out of the oceans are there because of the moon cycles. So I want to talk for just very briefly. There are lots and lots of resources if you want to look more about the moon cycles. But I think it's very important to know that the new moon is the new beginning. It's a new cycle, and every time we have a full moon and we go back to the new moon, we have the opportunity to start over. We can look back at the last 28 days and say, I like what I did, and here's what I'm doing next. Or I don't like what happened, so I'll change the next 28 days. But it's a new cycle. And we go through the waxing crescent, going into that half moon at the first quarter. And as we go through that, we have the opportunity of setting new intentions and making new decisions and reflecting on those decisions that we're getting ready to implement. And as we get into the full moon, it's the time to seal those intentions, to say, this is where I am right now. It's a time for setting goals on the soul level. And as we move out of the full moon, we step into the time where we need to give gratitude and reflect inside ourselves and implement those intentions. And the third quarter invites us to look at forgiveness for ourselves, forgiveness for others. And then when we get to the waning crescent moon, letting go, letting it all go, surrendering to whatever has occurred, to whatever has happened, being grateful for the experience, happy or not happy, but grateful for the experience. And we move back into the new beginning with the new moon. So right now we're leaving the third quarter, that half moon, but on the waning side, and we're almost to the crescent moon. And the vibration of the crescent moon guides us to think about that forgiveness and that surrender. And by Sunday, we're into the new moon on November 15th, the invisible moon. And it's a time of new beginnings. It's the time, if we will open to it, if we will allow those cycles to have an impact on our lives instead of ignoring it, we can let everything be cleared and create new intentions for the new moon as we go through another cycle of the moon. And then astrologically, let's look at the astrological things that happen with the planets. Now, I think you can probably see my little mouse there. There's the Earth, and there's our tiny little moon with us. And this is the lineup of the planets all the way out to Pluto out here. So I want to talk for just a little bit about these astrological placements of the planets and kind of how they can impact our lives. So the Black Plague in 1347 in Europe was blamed on the conjunction of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars sitting in Aquarius in 1345. And the people were quite sure that the Black Plague happened because of that conjunction of those planets. We laugh at that today, don't we? But guess what? 2020 is the same conjunction as we sit here in COVID-19. Coincidence? Maybe, except that I don't really believe in coincidence. I think there's more synchronicity than, than coincidence in what we do. So I want to talk for just a little bit. Now, this chart is just, all I want you to see from this is that, you know, we take 365 and a quarter days to actually circle the sun. Mercury is the closest to the sun, and it only takes 88 days. And I'm sure you've probably heard, you know, Mercury's in retrograde and everything falls upside down. And that's kind of a common language these days. But as you can see, if it takes only 88 days, Mercury's going around the sun 4 times in our year. And so it has the opportunity to go in retrograde a lot more than the other planets do. And the further out the planets are, like Pluto, takes 248 years to go around the sun. So it's a long process. Excuse me. It's a long process for Pluto to come around, and lots of things happen as Pluto comes back to its origin as we go through it. So I want to talk for just a little bit about Mercury, Jupiter, Pluto, and Mars. Now, I'm not an astrologer. I do follow a number of astrologers, but I want to talk to you about the cycles that happen in our lives. So November 10th, yesterday, Mercury came out of retrograde and moves into Scorpio. And so what astrology will tell you is that as that came out of retrograde, we may be able to clear some troubled areas because the vibrations are such that the planetary vibrations help us to do that. Several astrologers, one I like, Astro Butterfly, tells us that tomorrow, November the 12th, brings Jupiter into conjunction with Pluto. And what she says is that we're coming up to the peak of our fear of the virus, not just in the United States, but in the world. And that after we hit that peak tomorrow or so, that our fear will become more manageable because the alignment of the planets put us in a place where we're not quite as fearful. And Mars comes out of retrograde day after tomorrow, moving into Aries. And Mars can help us find new ways of doing things. So that's a lot of astrology and a lot of words about planets and things. But, and I'll talk in just a minute about how we can work with these cycles. But before I do that, I want to talk about the larger astrological ages. This is a period of about 26,000 years and broken into the 12 zodiac cycles, supposedly of 1,160, but that's a little fuzzy as well. When you're talking about this many years, it's not an exact science, but this is a real occurrence. It happens because of the motion of our Earth in the precession of the equinoxes. And every indigenous group I have ever studied, and I've studied several of them, every indigenous belief system has this in their mythology or has direct teachings of these astrological ages. And so I want to give you just a brief rundown on this. The age of Leo goes back to 10,800 BCE. Now, that's like about 12,000 years ago. And most of these dates are kind of looking at 2000-ish cycles. Some are covering a little more, a little less, but just keep that in mind that it's roughly 2,000-year cycles we're in here. So the age of Leo was 12,000 years ago up to about 10,000 years ago. And that's when the ice age began to move along. The climate warmed up. Now this was, the Earth is much, much older than 26,000 years. So we've been through multiples of these 26,000 year cycles. But this most recent one is when the ice age began to change. And the cultures around the world, the indigenous cultures, were worshiping the sun through this time period. As we moved into Cancer, the goddess worship was predominant and stayed predominant through a couple of more ages through here, but it was at its height during this 8600 BCE. That's about 10,000 years ago. And then as we moved into the age of Gemini, the human consciousness moved kind of from a tribal consciousness to a more individualistic consciousness, which caused the emergence of written language and myths. But it also was the beginning of our perception of duality. When we were in a tribal consciousness, we knew that we were a part of nature, a part of Earth, a part of all that was. But as we began to move into the individualistic consciousness, we moved into the us and them kind of consciousness. And then as we moved into the age of Taurus, we moved more into agriculture. And of course, the worship of nature spirits and fertility goddesses was the predominance with that because we were farming. And with farming, we moved into cities and wealth and money, which often leads into greed and other things. As we moved into the age of Aries, we moved into a military culture. Now, there were some battles, there were some weapons back in some of these other ages, though what archaeologists tell us that during the period of the goddess worship back at 8,000 BCE, there were no forts, there were no barriers around villages, and that there were worship centers in the center of the village, and each of the homes had worship centers in them. So we were not a warring people at that point in time. We moved into that over time, especially as we moved from tribal to individualistic. And so over time, we became more and more warlike. And by the age of Aries, We were in a military culture, and this was the hero-centered mythology. Moses, Hercules, Spartacus, Alexander the Great, sound familiar? Moved into the masculine gods, and we moved from matriarchy into the period of patriarchy as we moved into the age of Aries. We're still in the era of patriarchy as we move into Pisces. This is coming up to modern times. So Aries was from 2000 BCE up to 0 CE, or current era. We used to call it AD, but current era. So this is a time of Pisces when we had the compassionate avatar begin to appear in our culture throughout the world. Judaism began in the, one back from this as we went back to this one into Aries, but continued on into the age of Pisces, and Christianity became the more dominant religion at this point. Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, all of these had avatars. And the higher purpose, the divine purpose in the age of the Pisces, was for us to begin to understand once again that the separation that we feel, the us and the them, was an illusion. We didn't do very well in the age of Pisces, but it was the beginning of that, and the beginning of us being able to begin to release the concept of duality. So those were possibilities as we started into Pisces, and now we're moving into the age of Aquarius. Now, we don't know the exact dates of any of these. There are many who said that we moved into Aquarius in the late 1800s because of many things that occurred at that point. There are others who say we're not moving into Aquarius until 2100 or 2400, but whatever the exact date is, we're in a cusp of several hundred years as we move into this age of Aquarius. And where we are right now is in an age of chaos. You can call it, some people refer to it as the fifth, we're in the third dimension, moving into the fifth dimension. I say moving into Aquarius, whatever kinds of language you want to put with it. We're moving in a vibration that's very different from where we've been for the last 2000 or so years. And so we're in chaos as we move in this, because transition always causes chaos. One of the significant things about the age of Aquarius is the symbol for Aquarius is the water bearer. What that represents is that we in Aquarius become responsible for carrying our own water, for making our own pathway in our spiritual development. We no longer have an avatar who will specifically lead us through a particular path. We are responsible for remembering who we are, for finding our way through this process and finding the opportunities to follow the path that works for us. So that's why I'm talking about the cycles, because we're moving in these cycles, and we're beginning now, moving into Aquarius, to unwind those threads of division, those threads that have woven greed and trickery and deceitfulness so much into our cultures throughout the world. And so the water bearer comes to help us unwind those threads. We can look at all of these cycles and as weaving, and we can follow our fear, or we can let the cycles give us some guidance as we see these paths. The cycles, whether it's an astrological cycle, whether it's the cycle of the sun and the moon, whether it's the cycle of the medicine wheel, the spirit wheel, there are energies or vibrations that go with each of these cycles. And so we can choose to resist the energy of those cycles or acknowledge the energies of those cycles. Now, we know our reactions with our ego and our personality, and basically we don't really want to change that. We're very comfortable with who we are, where we are, and what we know. And the fear comes up because we need to change. And when change comes about, we very often fight that change. Fear has its place. Fear was given to us to warn us of danger. It's one of those, the fight and flight. Fear comes up and to tell us that we need to get away from the situation, or it's time to stand up in the situation. But really, fear was meant to just be a light, a reminder, kind of a crackle when there's danger near. But what we've done in our culture is take that fear and let it have root in our hearts and in our minds. And so the fear drives us rather than the connection with the divine guiding us. Fear is the driver. So what do we do? What can we do? Can we break this pattern? Well, it's certainly not easy because, first of all, we fear change. But let's look at some ways that we might be able to break the pattern. We can break down these blocks of fear or doubt or whatever the emotions are by becoming aware of those blockages, just like the cat with the binoculars here in the picture, searching out the mystery, becoming aware of where the blocks are. And if we can find the blocks, then we have the opportunity to make a change. And because change is often so scary, we have to really commit to a change. Committing to a change doesn't mean throwing out everything that you know. It means standing firm and putting your toe over into the little puddle and keeping the other foot on solid ground and bringing that foot back and saying, okay, I can do this. Put the toe back in, and then maybe the next foot. It can be a very slow process, but the key here is the commitment to the change of saying, yes, I know I need to let go of these things. And so what's the next step? So we can choose our journey. We can choose. We have the ability to choose the activities. We have the ability to choose the tools that we use on our spiritual journey, because remembering who we are guides us to that initiatory, some people call it an initiation, as we take that step and commit to the change. So what we have to do along that path is find the activities and the tools that can help us move through the changes. We consciously or unconsciously weave our lives in these cycles. So becoming conscious of what we're doing is one of the steps in being able to make a change. Sometimes we're just following the threads that our parents left for us. It doesn't matter if you're 15 or 500, you're following the patterns that your parents left for you, unless you make some serious conscious effort to make a change in that. So we follow those threads. And sometimes we're able to remember that we can weave those threads and change some of the threads. Sometimes we're able to listen and hear that inner voice within that can help us weave a change. There are guides there waiting for us in that unseen realm. All we have to do is ask. But we have to be open and willing for those guides to help us. And that's part of the choices that we make, choosing the tools, choosing the methods. On my spiritual path, I've been through I've studied world religions in depth, and I've studied indigenous cultures. Where I am on my path for the last many years, I've been weaving with the Celtic and the Egyptian traditions. And what you're seeing here in the center is actually the logo that I created for my business, Mother Earth Sacred Tours. It takes the triple spiral that's on the left there, the triple spiral of the Celtic and the pre-Celtic line. These are on carvings that are on mounds that are as much as 7,000 or 8,000 years old. The triple spiral comes from that Celtic line, and the Eye of Horus comes from the Egyptian line. And I've blended them into one symbol because of my blending of the Celtic and the Egyptian. So, and that's my website, the Mother Earth Sacred Tour site. Some of you I know attended the webinar that I did in June, and that's the Mother Earth Sacred Sites.com website. Both of those are still active websites, but both of them reflect my background with both the Celtic and the Egyptian directions. So when we begin to wake up to remember who we are, we begin to remember our soul's purpose. And as that glimmer comes in, we realize that we need to sometimes make a personal transformation. Not an easy thing to do, because we are set up with our patterns and we like them where they are, even when we know we need to change, even when we know things are not good for us. That's why I stand in the east and ask the wind to blow through me and help release some of those things that need to be cleared. And I step into the fires of the south so I can burn away those that I know need to be released. It's not the end of it, but it's a step in the direction of that personal transformation. And in that transformation, we have to find a spiritual practice that helps us move from identifying with our ego to identifying with our soul. Until we make that transition, and we never let go of our ego. As long as we're in human body, the ego is there, and the ego has benefit, just like the fear has some positive benefits for us. But we need to change our primary identification from the ego to the soul path and look for our spiritual path. And in that, find the tools and find a practice that helps us move along to our personal transformation. And that personal transformation helps the planetary transformation that we are now in the middle. Part of that transformation with the planetary move, we are in chaos. And so our personal transformation is helping us. We find our spiritual practice to help us learn how to dance in the chaos rather than to be held down and become part of the chaos. So we need to be humble, but we need to be noble because we are made of stars. So we make this transition by finding out what works best. You find out what works best for you. Some people start with meditation, or maybe they explore the chakras. Maybe there are particular religious pursuits that work. Whatever is working, whatever you're called to, go and explore that and move toward it. The Druids say that we need to follow an inner way and an outer way. Meditation is part of the inner way, and ritual or ceremony is part of the outer way. So one way to put that into action is to make a ritual of every day meditating for 5 minutes on nature. If you can go out into nature and meditate for 5 minutes, then do that. If you can't actually go into nature, then sit with a picture of nature like this one, of the river flowing and as the sun is beginning to set in the afternoon. This is the Swananoa River very near me. But sit with nature. Sit in whatever way works for you. I'm sitting in a room with wood paneling behind me. This wood came from trees. And so sometimes when the weather's bad and I can't go outside, I sit in my room and realize I'm surrounded by wood. I am in nature, even though it's no longer growing as a tree. So sit with nature because that will open your mind to communicate with nature, with the trees and the animals and the plant and the wind. It will change everything about the way that you think about the elements and the nature. And what you do by sitting there with nature is that you're sending a message to nature as well, saying that you want the communication from nature. So try it for a week or two and see if it makes a difference in the way you relate to nature. Another method, going to indigenous cultures, the Dagara cosmology out of Africa, says that a spiritual awakening, following a spiritual path, going through a spiritual awakening, is like being thrown into two worlds, two totally different worlds, the water, the mountains, being thrown into two worlds. Living in this world on the earth where we are now, but allowing the heart and the soul to do the thinking. That's living in two worlds. The traditional world or the conservative world doesn't recognize this as an awakening, but it is. It is a part that we can take. It's a step that we can take in that process of opening up and becoming one with the divine, remembering it. Another path is seeking the divine feminine journey, asking for guidance from the goddesses. There are Celtic and pre-Celtic goddesses that I work with Bridget, the Mordigan, the Caliac, and many, many others of that Celtic line. Or goddesses like Kuan Yin, who is the Bodhisattva of compassion. Many, many stories about her and much guidance that could come through Kuan Yin. Or from the Egyptian deities, like Ma'at, who is the goddess of balance and harmony. Or Sekhmet, the protector goddess who stands up and teaches us how to be warriors of the heart. Or the goddess of love, Hathor, and all that she brings to us with love and harmony and beauty. Or Isis, the divine mother. Or other goddesses, Mary and the Magdalene line. But listening for that guidance from that divine feminine direction is another of the ways that we can move toward this. For me, walking in the temple of Hathor, or Heteru, as she's called in Egyptian, the Greeks renamed her Hathor, and that's the name that most of the people in certainly the Western world know her. But the temple, walking in the temple of Heteru, takes us into unconditional love. Hathor is the goddess of love, and not just romantic love, but the true unconditional love for all beings. She can teach us divine love. She's a guide, a protector. She can be our strength. She can be our joy. She brings us the mother love that perhaps many of us never had, at least not as much or in the way that we needed it and wanted it to be. Hathor can teach us that mother love. Hathor's name literally means womb. And so if we think of our womb as an environment or a matrix where something develops, where something takes form, we can think of it like a spider web weaving, weaving. And so Hathor's matrix of weaving is metaphysical. She teaches us spiritual nourishment, protection, healing, joy, lovemaking, music in all kinds of aspects. And walking with Hathor's temple can take us deeper, much deeper into our spiritual path. This is a picture in Egypt of the alley of sphinxes that honor Hathor. She was often called the cow goddess because the cow is the giver of life, the provider of the milk and the nourishment. And so these are sphinxes with the head of a cow, and there's a long, long row of them. Not all of them are still standing, but it's an alley of a couple of miles between Karnak Temple and Luxor Temple in the city of Luxor. And there are other sphinxes along the way as well. But walking with Hathor's temple can guide us on a spiritual path if we choose to go that direction. And walking with Isis is another powerful, powerful choice that we can make. She is the divine feminine. She's that creative power that brought forth living creatures. She commanded the elements. She resurrected the dead, her husband Osiris. She caused the sun to roll backwards in the process of moving all these things. And so Isis is of the upper world. Osiris rules the underworld. And she and Osiris are there to teach us the depths of consciousness as we walk in the middle world. So she can guide us on that spiritual path if we will open and allow her to do that. She teaches us how to use the celestial mysteries of the earth. This is a picture of Nefertari bringing food and drink to Isis. Nefertari, many people have heard of Nefertiti, who's supposed to be the most beautiful of all the queens. Well, Nefertari, we have not heard nearly as much about her, but in the Egyptian world, Nefertari is probably regarded as the most beautiful, the beloved of the goddess is often how she's referred to. She was this incredible queen. She was the primary wife of Ramses II, and she did so many things for people and for children. And so she's highly regarded as this amazing, wonderful, wonderful human who was led by Isis, who was guided by Isis. Isis was her mentor. And this is a picture of Isis taking Nefertari's hand, leading her on her spiritual journey. Nefertari has a crown of vulture wings, and the vulture is very, very important in association with Isis because the vulture is a bird that flies through the air. The female vulture flies with her eggs and flies through the air to catch the semen from the male vulture and gives a virgin birth because there is no interaction between the male and the female. This is a story of Isis and Osiris, and Isis giving birth to Horus. It's the story of Mary and Jesus and the virgin birth. So the emblem, most of the time you see Nefertari with this vulture crown because of her association with Isis. And Isis said to Nefertari, "Come, Nefertari, beloved of the goddess, that I may show you your place in the sacred world." So what I'd like for you to do right now is just sit for just a few minutes with some slow and easy breathing, and reach your hand out and ask for Isis to take your hand And let Isis walk you on the spiritual journey with her. Let Isis be your guide for just a few minutes. What would your world be like if you believed that you were the beloved of the goddess, of the divine? Would you live your life differently? Would you treat people differently? Would you treat yourself differently? So feel the love of Isis surrounding you, holding you. Feel the love of the great Mother Goddess. And just as Nefertari did, let Isis take your hand and know that she's protecting you as you step into this meditation. And with your guardian all around, let your heart open. Let your heart open like a flower, like the petals of a bud. Open, open, open. Let that heart open and let the love flow into you, filling every atom and molecule in your physical body. Let that divine energy of love flow into your emotional body. Let it begin the healing that you may need for your emotional body. Letting go of stress, letting go of any disharmony. Let that energy flow into your mental body. Flowing, flowing, flowing. And as that love, divine love, flows into you, let it show you your pathway to your spiritual development. Let that love from the divine shine the light upon your path. Let the divine illuminate the tools that you need to serve the divine. Let Isis show you the ways to express yourself as the beloved of the goddess. And bring your hands in front of your chest, in front of your heart. And say thank you with your hands opened. Say thank you to Isis. Say thank you to the divine. Say thank you to the oneness. Ask for the help that you need to illuminate your path. And then bring your hands together, palm to palm at your heart. And begin to fold those openings of your heart back together, but knowing that you can reopen those those petals at any time that you need to open to the divine. And hold that place within your heart, and hold that memory within your mind, so that you see the way, so that you find the people that need to help you, and you find the divine guides who need to help you, and the tools that you need to be the servant of the highest good. And just take your hands that are there at your chest and just kind of open your hands and drag your hands down your body, down the front of your body to your knees, and just kind of toss that energy off into the ground past your knees, off to Mother Earth, and just kind of brush yourself again, and just kind of as if you were brushing crumbs off yourself. Let that energy, whoa, open that up and feel that energy flow all around you. Wow. So I'm going to stop sharing here just a minute, but and I will post this on the website so you can go back and look at it. But if you would like to join this journey with me, I would love to offer you the tools that I have to help you go along your path. But let me stop the share. And I know it's always difficult to talk much after you've gone through a meditation, but I do want to open up for questions or comments. And let's see, we have a little more than 30 people, so we should be able to do this. If you'll just kind of wave at me, and so we won't all be trying to talk at once. But if you'd like to comment, just give me or if you hit the reaction button and raise your hand, I'll watch for that as well. But if you'd like to say something or ask a question, anybody, you can go ahead and I may be missing. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a comment or a question that you'd like to go into. Let me open the chat. Also, if you have a question, you can post it in the chat if you'd rather do that than speak as well. I'm hearing silence. Maggie, I can see that you're about to speak.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful, Peggy. Really a wonderful introduction to the course. I'm really looking forward to taking it with you.
Yes,
So
thank you.
It's really a special time for us since we're isolated during COVID through the winter, and for you to offer to accompany us on our journeys. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, we'll be meeting twice a month from now until the first week of March. And if you have any questions about the course and you want to send me an email, I'll be glad to, or if you want to call me, if you're in the United States, you can call. At the end of the email, my phone number is on there. And if you're out of the country, I have a WhatsApp number listed on there as well if you want to talk about it. But if you have any questions, please feel free to to let me know. But this is, what I want you to find is a path that works for you, a path that helps you move to your highest potential. That's what we're working toward. Yeah. Finding your path. Anyone else? Wow, you're all very quiet here right now. Yeah.
You do have a couple of comments in the chat.
Ah, good. Let me look over there. Okay, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, she's this lovely presentation. Marie Alice joined us she's from Canada. Paula says, lovely meditation, historical, cultural background. She says, I like the idea of searching for the right people and the tools for finding our spiritual path. Yes. So very, very important to do that. Yeah. Because not the same path doesn't work for everyone. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Well, as I said, if you have any questions after this, please feel free to email me. Let me, you can, it's Mother Earth sacredtours.net. And if you want to email me, you can email me at Peggy at motherearthsacredtours.net. Oops. Sorry, I'm sending it to, someone sent me a private message and I need to change it to everyone. There we go. Okay, everyone, there's the website. And you can send me a message through the website, or you can send a direct email at Peggy at motherearthsacredtours.net if you'd like to do that. Yeah, Paula says many ideas written by the Christian mystics like Hildegard. Yes, Julian of Norwich. Yes, yes, very, very much so. There's so much, Joseph Campbell, who was just the most incredible person who talked about the cross-cultural. Joseph Campbell said that all religions have a thread that runs through. We spend so much time looking at our differences that we forget to look at the similarities that are there, that run across there, because each religion has to have the way, and really the ways are all valid if you're on your spiritual journey, if you're following your spiritual path, your own awakening is what we're talking about. Yeah. Anyone else before we close? Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate you being here, and appreciate you listening. And thank you so very much. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm not leaving.
I thought you would stay on.
Hi, Nancy. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Darcy.
Darcy Deal, I have known my absolute entire life. She was my neighbor across the street. We grew up, let's see, everybody on here is safe to say this. We grew up in this very conservative little Christian town, very small town in Tennessee. And I don't know what happened to the two of us, but you know, we went out there. We stretched the limits.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I'm so happy to see you on here.
I'm happy to see you too. Love you much. Keep
And
it.
hello, Terry. And it looks like Truth is here.
Yeah, Truth is on the call. Yep.
Hello, Truth.
Just
No
wanted to say
telling
thank you,
what
Peggy.
she's up to. She may be doing multitasking.
Oh, yeah, right.
Those of you that are still on here, Truth is my daughter. Some of you know that. Yeah. Ah,
Peggy, I especially liked you illuminating the different ages. That clearly, that was very interesting to me.
mhm.
I like hearing the specifics of what each age represented and when it happened and what were the results.
Yeah.
I didn't want to dominate the comments afterwards. I just wanted to say a little bit and then try to get people to speak. But I guess it's a shy group.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I particularly like the ages, and it supports what we've been talking about the shift
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
coming or we're in the
Yeah.
middle of.
My first introduction to those ages was in the early 70s through theosophy. But I have found, you know, they may not use the same words, but I have found it in many different indigenous cultures. The Mayan calendar is related to that, you know,
Mhm.
and there is the ending of the Mayan calendar in 2012 is the distinction with the ending of that age and the coming of the new age. And in fact, the cusp, even with the Mayan calendar, for those who know the Mayan calendar, I don't know too much about it, but I have listened to a couple of folks who really are very deeply involved in that. And the cusp on that calendar is really goes through, I believe it's 2027.
Mm.
I forget because there's a number of the cusp is, I think it's, I can't remember if it's 18 years before 2012 and 18 years after. It's a certain number of years before and after that are in the cusp of that period. So, and they never intended for it to, for us to think that the Mayan calendar ending in 2012 was the end of the world. It was the end of the age,
Mm.
which goes back to this whole cycle of ages. Yeah.
Truth just sent a chat that she can't use the sound right now,
Oh, okay.
but she's sending her love.
Yes, I see it over there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I send you my love too, Truth.
Well, I'm excited. Let's get into the age of Aquarius.
All right.
Thank you, Peggy.
Let's go.
Thank you, Terry. I'm so glad you're here. It's so wonderful to see you.
Fine presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Terry has been to Machu Picchu long time ago.
Quite an experience, actually several times. And
Mm.
back in the late 90s, when it was not overrun, there was just enough people there to make it remain, to help it remain sacred. But
Mm.
it's a destination right now, and that's good. But it's also very, very busy.
Mhm.
But yes, that was very powerful.
Mm.
Okay, so thanks again. I'll see you next time.
All right. Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Bye. Yeah.
See you tomorrow, Peggy.
All right. See everybody tomorrow.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.